Hello, I'm the flower man Wayne DeBey, and this is Elements of Design. Today we're going to look at bridal bouquets. June is coming and brides abound everywhere this time of year. I thought maybe it would be good to show you how to do some of the basic hand-tied bouquets that have been very popular for many years. I'm going to start with one of the new popular flowers, peonies. Peonies are everywhere. In the shelter magazines, you see them all over. If you watch on television, they're often placed in houses and homes on the dramas and sitcoms. And these peonies, unfortunately, are not local. These actually came out of a farm in New Mexico. We do have a local peony farm, but the weather has not always been kind, and it's a little early for their production to really come on. One of the things that you learn in doing hand ties is that you want to make sure that your stems are fairly clean and smooth. I don't know if you can see, but the leaflets where they attach leave kind of bumps, so I want to take the knife and I want to come along and smooth those out. When you're doing this, you don't want to cut into the structure, into the stem. You really just want to smooth that off so that you have a relatively smooth stem when you're done. The little bumps will show up, especially under ribbon, and I guess it could be one of those things that maybe helps keep the bouquet from sliding, but I just think they need to be taken off. So we're going to take 5 peonies, and sometimes you have to help them out a little bit. This one's a little tight yet, and so I'm going to try to gently brush the blossom open. And if we have a little bit of time, we can put this in water when we're done, and it will go ahead and open on up as well. You don't want to be really hard with it. You want to have a fairly light touch because you don't want to be bruising the tops of those flowers. So I'm going to start with, I use a length of ribbon to do my tying, and I'm going to put it up around my neck so I know maybe where it's at when I need it. I'm going to start with a smaller one in the center. I've chosen 5 because it really works to have an odd number. If you're doing 2, it's kind of an interesting side-by-side look, but it's not a very round look, and I want to have more of that Victorian bouquet. I want something round. The stems, as I'm placing them, I'm going to put them in my hand and I'm going to cross them over. The reason that you want to do this is so that when you're done with your bouquet, you can pull it tight without actually breaking the stems. And that really works on any sort of bouquet that you're doing as a hand tie. You want to be crossing those stems. I didn't like where that was going, so I turned it around and found a spot that I liked a little bit better. So I'm going to come in here, and at this point they're still loose in my hand, so I can move them up and down. I don't have to be in any given spot. They're not tight. I can kind of adjust and see what I like. Now at this point I think this works for me. I think I've got my start there. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to tie, and you can use all sorts of material. The reason that I'm using the ribbon is that it won't cut into the stem, and especially in softer flowers, softer stem flowers, you really can have a problem if you use wire or something sharper. It will cut into the stem and it will shut the water off at that point. It won't be drinking anymore. These flowers are still living organisms, and when we're done we'll cut them off and we're able to put them in water and keep them going up until really the time of the service, the wedding, and then afterwards the bride can drop them back into water. I'm going to tie a little knot in there. Another thing that we're seeing a lot of recently the return of baby's breath. Peonies and baby's breath, they are just everywhere. And this is one of the big blossomed varieties. For many, many years we had the Million Star, which was a very tiny blossomed variety. And now we're coming back to what is really, in my mind, a much more old-fashioned style. So we're going to come in and we're going to really try to come kind of under the other blossoms, the peonies. Pull that in. Let's take another stem. And you have to kind of look at it as you go. Here I've got some damage and I don't really want that, so I'm going to come in and clip that out. And that's going to make that little branch a little too low. I said these peonies were out of New Mexico, and their peonies have become available almost year-round. There was a time when they were extremely seasonal and you couldn't find them for much of the year. Nowadays, because of air freight and the flowers being grown all over, we're seeing peonies almost year-round. Domestically, we start seeing them this time of year, and then through the summer and into the early fall, and the crop follows the geography of the United States and moves from south to north. They don't grow a whole lot further south. You do find them in Oklahoma, but if it gets too warm, it doesn't seem like we have very good peony production. So we really see it from here north. Alaska has come on very strong in the last several years as a big peony producer. And we see those starting in late July and in August and September. And they are glorious. It's much like everything that Alaska seems to grow. Blossoms are big and beautiful and truly wonderful. Very, very vigorous. So I've almost made it all the way around. And as I look, I can see some little brown baby's breath blossoms. Don't want those. I've got a hole here, so I need to find one more stem. And this has taken over 2/3 of a bunch of baby's breath to surround it, just to kind of give you an idea of the amount of product that it can take to do this if you want this full, lush look surrounding it. Back to where peonies are produced, earlier in the season, we were seeing peonies from the South American continent. Chile grows peonies in quite an abundance. And then we also see them out of Italy and the Netherlands. I'm going to come in here at this point and wrap a couple more times around with this ribbon and pull it a little bit tighter. I've got a fairly round look, but over here I've got this little sprig that is up and out of the top of it, and I'm not very happy with that. I'm going to come in and just trim it out. That's why I wasn't too worried about that as I started, that I knew that I could come back in. Now I want to grab some greenery, and I'm going to use lemon leaf or salal for this. And it's a broad leafed green. I'm going to prune it so that I have kind of a consistent nest, if you will, of leaves to press up against the bottom of my flowers. Maybe one or two more pieces, just to be sure. I also want to stay fairly consistent with my leaf size if I can. I don't want huge leaves if I can help it, so that all the way around the bouquet the leaves are very similar. So I think I'm ready. So I'm going to come now and put my first piece of salal up underneath here. And I'm still doing that crossover. I'm still on this, when I'm doing this bouquet, I'm doing everything on an angle from the front towards the back. I'm just making kind of a collar, if you will, underneath this. And here, I don't know if the camera can pick this up, but I have a little nick in the edge of the leaf. And salal is a green that you can actually prune, trim it, and it will tolerate that. It won't show the damage. So I've got most of it. I've got a spot over here that I need a leaf in, and I just happen to have this one. So there we've got pretty much that round Victorian bouquet. Got it collared underneath with the salal, and now we're going to come in and I'm going to pull this a little bit tighter. I'm going to wrap it a time or two. I'm going to go ahead and put a knot in this. And snug that up a little bit. Take a look, decide if this is what I like, and I do. I think this is workable. So then I'm going to come on down on the spots where I've got little bumps on my stem, try to take those off again, smoothing that out. So I've got it relatively smooth under the hand. And now I'm going to turn it. I can turn it this way and can wrap the bouquet down the stem. And because they have all been crisscrossed, then you can crush them together and you don't break stems. These stems, like I said, this particular group of stems are fairly sturdy, and so that's not as big of a problem as it would be with more tender stems. Things that are like tulips, and doing a hand-tied bouquet with tulips. Tulips are, when they're fully hydrated, they're very crisp, and they snap a lot like a piece of celery almost. And so you have to be a little more careful, be a little kinder with them. So I'm just going to pull this up. I've got a nice straight handle under here where I want it to be. I've got all this excess, but we'll deal with that in a moment. And just try to pull it up. Now I might come in and come under one of those big stems and take that around for one last knot. Pull it tight, then I'm going to trim that off. Now I've got way more material than I need down here, so I'm going to come in and I want to have, for the bride, the bridesmaid, I want to have a hand, and I realize my hand is much bigger than the average bridesmaid, but I want to have at least one hand's width under there, and then about another one below that. So we're going to come in somewhere about here. It's better to err on the side of being a little too long. You can always cut them down. Putting them back on is another trick. Now I'm going to come in with, this is a double-faced satin, same finish on both sides, a bridal satin. And I'm going to come here. I'm using a little U-glue dot, which is a wonderful invention in the floral industry. What that does is it allows me to start my ribbon and make sure that it stays where I put it. So again, I'm going to come in, I put my tail up, and I'm really wrapping over my tail. It doesn't need to be all the way up, but it's just another thing that locks it in so that that's not going to come loose and fall apart. I like to know that the bridal bouquet or the bridesmaid's bouquet will stay together and there's not a real big issue with that. Then I'm going to come up to the top. I'm going to come in, and again, I've got some extra ribbon. I'm going to make a knot in here. I'm going to pull it through. Well, I'm not going to pull that one through, so I'll try that again. Get it up and through there. And then pull this tight. And it probably would stay there by itself. However, I guess I have a need for the fact that it will stay. I'm going to take a pin, this is a corsage pin, and I'm going to go ahead and place that here and slide that down into the center of the bouquet. You want to slide it into the center of the stems, not where it's poking out at you. And then I'm going to come in and trim. Try to do a nicer trim on it so I don't have a jagged edge there. And there's a good start on a bouquet. If we wanted to, we could come in and make a bow, use this same material and do a nice bow underneath it and tuck that on there as well. Just kind of give you a little visual. To add a little loops of ribbon trailing down. But I think I'm going to stop with this for now in the interest of time, and I want to show you another type of bouquet. Clear my spot here just a little because I've got a mess. I'm going to put this bouquet, reach over and drop it in some water. I want to do a traditional rose bouquet. And I'm going to put, this is a thistle product called Eryngium, and it has a great blue color. Blue's not a very common color naturally. And so I want to look at my roses, make sure I think that they're all nice on top. I run on a, this is a 60-70 centimeter rose, and this is a type of rose that I normally would run on in store. Big heads and nice long stems. I can cut them down, but you don't get the nice big heads with the shorter stems. Roses are really sold by, they're graded by stem length and head size, two things to look at. You can have long stems and a small head. I tend to buy, again, the bigger headed roses. I like big, beautiful roses. If I want a small rose, I will go to a sweetheart rose or do a spray rose, which is very similar to the sweetheart roses, only it has a multiple heads. It has maybe 3, 4, 5 blossoms. The prep on hand-tied bouquets really is the big secret. You don't want to have to do a whole lot of cleaning once you get into the process. You want to be able to, when you start to put a bouquet together, be able to slide it pretty well. Unfortunately, these are not highly thorned roses. I've had roses where if I did this, my hand would be full of thorns. So I like to use roses in a little more open of a stage. And so with this bouquet, I would try to make this the day ahead and let it sit out so that the roses have an opportunity to open and bloom out. And the Eryngium, like I said, it's in the thistle family, but it's got a great blue color to it. These stems have been very nicely cleaned from the grower, and that is good. It's something that we don't always see, and maybe that's what I need. Also thought about putting a little bit of hypericum berry in these. This is a little white Hypericum berry. And Hypericum berry, if you are a gardener, a master gardener, or a botanist, you might recognize Hypericum. The common name is St. John's wort, or yes, St. John's wort. And it is one of those products that is used to put people to sleep, make them calm. And this is, although this is a fancy variety of it, this is essentially what all of the Hypericums look like before they bloom. This is not really a berry as such. This is a blossom that hasn't opened. Let's give this a go. In this case, I want to pick one of these pieces. Here's two pieces that really have nice whorls. If you look down in them, they've got a nice circular pattern going already. So then I'm going to come in and I'm going to tuck that rose in the center. And if I don't like it there, I can always bring it up a little. I'm going to come onto the side. And I rotate this in my hand. I took classes from an Els Hazenberg many years ago. And she is a master Dutch florist, and she was teaching specifically hand-tied bouquets. She liked to point out that a truly efficient hand tire would never turn the bouquet, so I guess we know where I stand on that. I just think it makes it a little bit easier. Come in under here, and I'm dropping them down just a little. I'm putting a little difference in height in them to kind of round the edges on this a touch. So I've got 7 roses in the Hypericum, or not the Hypericum, the Eryngium. Now I want to go in and pull a little bit of this berry in. Maybe tuck it down in. And what that'll do is add a little bit of interest down in there. And especially the bride or bridesmaid as you're standing over, your vision of the bouquet is looking down into it. So you want to be able to look down in and see something of interest is what I always try to do. Give them a little bit of something to look for. And again, I'm going to take my ribbon, because I know these are all much harder stems than I did not do the knotting at first like I showed you on the other one. I'm going to come in here, we're going to do a little bit of knotting on there. I'm going to tie this one off. And cut it off. I think I'm confident I have it where I want it to be, so I'm going to cut it off. Again, if you look at this, and there's like, here's a blossom that was kind of covering that rose, so I'm going to pull it around a little bit. I didn't want it right there, so it doesn't have to be there. Just move it on over. Debating about whether I want to put another round of this on the outside, and maybe. This might almost be a Scottish bouquet, I guess. I look at it and I see the thistle and I think about that might be a Scottish bouquet. And then I want to come in, because I've got that kind of dusty blue in there, I thought it would be fun to maybe go ahead and add a little bit of this underneath as a finishing touch to it. This is a Dusty Miller, and we grow Dusty Miller in this area. This is out of Southern California, and it's a bigger variety than mostly what we grow. I grow a finer cut foliage, and it's very pretty in my flower beds. But this one is a big kind of almost drapey feel to it. And I think this adds a very, very natural touch. It tones that gray in. I'm going to come in one last pass with this. These are a little softer stems, so I'm probably not going to pull as tight, but I've tied this in the center already, so I don't have to worry about that center giving out. And again, because I've got a slight spiral to it, I can pull these stems together into a very tight column, and they won't break. I'm going to come under there, and I see I've got a broken stem there. So we'll come in and see if we can clip that out. Again, we could ribbon wrap this. You can do all sorts of textural things on this. You can come in underneath. And this could be a bridal bouquet, but it could also be just dropped in a vase. You could just chop this off, and this would work well in a fairly slender necked vase. And you could just do it this way. In fact, this is one of those things that a lot of times brides will use their bridal bouquets at the wedding reception. So after they've used them in the wedding, then they just put them in a vase for the reception and get that, use it again. I'm all about trying to use as much as we can. Use them as often as you can. Enjoy the flowers. I have one last thing that I thought I would try to show, and again, a very popular thing that we're seeing in bridal work. We're seeing a lot of succulents. I'm going to kind of gather my pretty gray leaves. I may save those and try to find a use for those shorter leaves. And so I have a little succulent. And we're doing a lot of things with these in bridal bouquets, and I'm going to make a boutonniere out of this, try to make a boutonniere. So the first thing you need to do is to take the soil off of the stem, and it has little roots. I want to try to take those roots off and clean that up as much as I can. I'm going to grab a towel. And clean this up just ever so slightly. And now I'm going to, should have been better organized, grab a couple of pieces of wire. So we've got the stem showing here. I'm going to take this and I'm going to take the wire. I'm going to pierce the stem through one way so that essentially I've got my succulent dangling on it. I'm going to fold it down on each side, and then I'm going to come back in and I'm going to come up a little higher or a little lower. You don't want to pierce it at exactly the same spot. You may actually break the stem by doing that. And again, do that same thing. So now I've got wire around. I'm going to take the longest tail and wrap it a couple of times. Now I can come in and take some floral tape and come underneath and tape this off. And because succulents tend to be fairly fragile, in spite of what they look like, I'm going to come in and use a product. This product is petal proofer, and what it will help do is help glue those little petals in there. So I'm going to hit that all the way around so that my blossom will stay together a little. Then I'm just going to lay it here and let it dry a moment. I'm going to find a nice salal leaf, something not too big, and I'm going to make it into a leaf I will use I will do a hairpin, if you will, and this is going to be the back side of my boutonniere, so I'm going to come in and pierce it on either side of the midrib from the back, pull it down. I've left a little stem on it, and I'm going to go ahead and wrap it there. Again, come in and do just a touch of taping. Floral tape is really a paper tape with a wax in it, and as you pull and stretch it, it will then stick to itself. And that's the big trick with floral tape, is you really need to be able to pull it to get that wax to activate and stick to itself. I want to come in with the Dusty Miller leaf. I just happen to think these are very pretty. And I'm going to do that same sort of hairpin, just bend my wire over the blade of my knife. This time I'm coming from the face, the fuzzy face of it, and I'm going to again pierce it on both sides of that midrib, pull it through so that you got this little bit of wire showing there. Come down and wrap that a time or two. Again, I'm going to tape. Now I've got this done. What I want to do is to come in and put this salal leaf behind, and the reason that I'm doing that is because the Dusty Miller can get a little weepy, a little limp. So I want to be able to give it some support behind its leaf. So I've got those Hypericum berry, and I'm going to pluck the big foliage off. I don't think the big leaves are very attractive, and you have to, it's a judgment call on some of the smaller leaves. If they're not pretty, you pluck them off as well. So I'm going to take my succulent and I'm going to kind of nestle it in the center of that Hypericum berry, and I'm going to put that all up against my leaves, my foliage, and tape that off. Kind of trim that up just a touch. And here you go, and we've got then a fairly interesting boutonniere ready to pin on. I have one that I've done prior to the start of the show, and I have gone ahead and finished the stem of it with some twine for a much more rustic look. This is, I think, makes a nice masculine sort of boutonniere. It's not a frilly, sissy sort of thing that a guy is going to back away from. So it's another way you could finish this out if you wanted to dress it up a little bit. Well, I think I'm out of time. I think I've shown you what I had in mind for today. I hope you have enjoyed it, and if you want to try your hand at hand-tied bouquets, why, give me a call. We'll see if we can find the flowers you need and let you go from there. This again is Wayne DeBey, the Flower Man. Thanks for watching.